No, Canon Brace. Unfortunately, Canon Brace is not here to be able to be with us this evening, so unfortunately there won't be able to be any prayers. So members of the council, it's time to start the meeting. Mrs. Ridge, could you please confirm whether there are any apologies for absence?
There are no apologies for absence, Madam Mayor, but we have just found out that Councillor Canon Brace-Gurgle is in the meeting.
Hello, Reverend Canon Brace-Gurgle, lovely to see you. Could you say prayers for us, please? Could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I have done, yeah. Sorry about the delayed arrival, it was the technology. Okay. Before I say the prayer, I'm sure Madam Mayor will refer to Councillor Paul Wilde's sad death, perhaps a little later, but if as we come to prayer, we just take that moment of quiet to remember Councillor Wilde. And as we turn our attention, members of Council, Madam Mayor, to our business this evening, so we pray, Lord God, we give you thanks and praise for the freedom and safety in which we live, for peaceful homes, for justice and order in our society, for standards of truth and honour, and for all our rights and privileges. We pray for those whose work it is to maintain and extend these blessings, especially in this council, its elected members and officers. We pray for all who have authority and responsibility in administering the law and maintaining the peace, in education and the care of children, in planning and building, and in providing both for work and leisure. Direct and use their influence that together we may build communities and neighbourhoods whose life does honour to your name by caring for others. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Canon Brace-Gurgle, and Happy New Year to you. We've already done apologies and confirmed absences. Just to introduce myself to those of you who are viewing our live stream, I'm Councillor Thomas and I'm the Mayor of Bolton this municipal year. And I'd like to begin this evening with a sad occasion for us. You just heard Canon Brace-Gurgle mention the death of Councillor Paul Wilde, but sadly we've also lost Honorary Alderman Norman Critchley and former Councillor Rita Fairhurst, former Councillor Westport South. All three councillors and former councillors were very popular people, who were very well respected and admired, and did a great deal of work for the residents in Bolton communities. So when we do think about them, just like you to think about all the good work they've done and how much that we will miss them all, and we send our thoughts and prayers to their families. If we could have a minute's silence, please. Thank you, councillors. For some better news, some happier news, I would like to congratulate our Bolton residents whose contributions have been recognised in the Queen's New Year's Honours List. These include Mr Robert Calrow for Charitable and Political Services in North West England, Mr David Bagley and Mrs Christine Bagley for services to the community in Bolton, particularly during the COVID-19 crisis. Dr Sharon Gray for services to blood transfusion and patient care. And Dr Hanavadeep Baraj for services to people with diabetes in the South Asian community. And thank you again to all the people who have supported and helped each other through this terrible time with positive contributions in our borough. Thank you very much for all that you've done. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Morgan.
Madam Mayor, I declare an interest under paragraph 12C of motion under standing order number 4 and the motion in the name of Councillor Sherrington Care Workers Pay, and I'll withdraw from the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Your interest will be noted. Chief Exec.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 2nd of December 2020.
Sorry, are these approved?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is changes to committee membership, but there aren't any to consider at this meeting, so we will move to questions under Standing Order 9(a).
Thank you. Excuse me, the first question in the name of Councillor Howard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members. To ask Councillor Cox about a partnership including Bolton Council was awarded skills capital funding for the establishment of a £30 million health skills college to be based at a site at Barnes Drive, Farnworth. Is any of the £1 million the council committed to this project already spent now? It is announced that the project is not moving forward, and this is a real blow. We want this health skills college in the south of the borough, as we know it will attract students from the local area and provide jobs at the site. For decades, many people from Farnworth and Harper Green areas have been working at the NHS site in question. Are other boroughs of Greater Manchester progressing with skills college improvements through Greater Manchester Skills Capital Awards, while Bolton is not now progressing on this? I'm asking this because I know those responsible in our borough have to pay attention to fairness in Greater Manchester, particularly to fairness on the apportioning of capital finance. I've not seen much on skills capital finance myself through the Scrutiny Committee Greater Manchester that I'm involved in, as the focus has been on scrutiny of Kickstart and Young Persons Guarantee in terms of skills and jobs there because of the terrific effects of coronavirus on the economy. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Councillor Howarth, for the question. The Council was prepared to support the Bolton College of Medical Science project, which was led by the University of Bolton and supported by the Council, both through the planning application and through a capital grant of £1 million. This funding was always contingent on the support of the Skills Capital project and the willingness of the university to proceed with the development. That funding, unfortunately, has now been withdrawn as a result of the unwillingness of the university at this very uncertain time to commit to the level of capital spending required to bring this project to fruition.
I acknowledge that this scheme would be of great value to the university, the hospital, and to the town as a whole. Whilst we realise the university's focus is currently, and understandably, their existing students' well-being, we wish them well in seeking to progress the scheme at a more appropriate time, and we would, of course, if the scheme does come forward again, be prepared to support it at a similar level of investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. The next question, Councillor Peel for Councillor Greenhalgh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've all watched the events as they've unfolded in the United States with increasing alarm, and it goes to show us how fragile democracy can be, and whichever side of the argument you're on, it demonstrates the principle that politicians rule with consent, rule via the will of the people, and that's demonstrated through its elected representatives. Policymakers must have a mandate. That's how democracy works. Now, what's this got to do with the question? I'll come to that. The fact of the matter is the Conservative cabinet do not have an electoral mandate. That's fine, I'm not breaking that up, but what they do have is a 25-point plan to ensure that agreed policies can go through. When we had the neighbourhood management debate, they went against the 25-point plan, they went against the partners, who the council voted almost unanimously, and they ignored that. We now have another opportunity, Madam Mayor, for the Care Workers Charter. And what I would say about that in particular is it doesn't matter about the areas that we don't directly run. We do have considerable influence. Now, to conclude, Madam Mayor, with a question, I'm not comparing David Greenhalgh with Donald Trump. Let me make that clear. But what I am saying is when people do not have a mandate, they should respect the wishes of the council. Councillor Greenhalgh and his cabinet should respect the wishes of the vote that took place in council that clearly said sign the Care Workers Charter. So I'm saying to Councillor Greenhalgh, please take it on the chin, please sign the charter. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm delighted that Councillor Peel is not comparing me to Donald Trump. That fills me with some satisfaction, at least. I just want to go over again the commitment and the support we have for the care sector. Following the council decision to sign up to the Care Workers versus COVID campaign, the council has continued to support our care sector in an ever-changing position. Our care staff in the borough continue to do a phenomenal job in continuing to deliver care to our most vulnerable people and responding to the increasing demands on them throughout this pandemic. It is to be noted that many aspects of the pledge have now been addressed nationally in relation to access to testing, PPE, and further rounds of infection control grant. And as previously stated to Council, the Cabinet continues to be supportive and committed to the principles of the pledge and has implemented this where it legally can do so and is in the Council's control. The Council has continued to promote areas of good practice to support the care workforce and have shared this with the providers in Bolton on a weekly basis. I just want to go through a little bit of an update on the areas identified in the pledge and additional information that backs up the support and the prioritisation of care homes and care staff for vaccination that we are supporting. Number one, priority testing for care workers. Testing is now well embedded across care homes and now community social care with weekly testing via PCR and lateral flow devices. This programme is also being expanded to wider social care groups through surge community testing commencing this week. In addition, the council supported our care homes with pathways for relative visiting when this is permitted to offer additional support for pod, window and touch visiting in as safe a way as possible. Providers are now able to order PPE via the national portal and emergency supplies via council LRF routes. PPE levels are monitored on a weekly basis and no issues have been experienced now since wave 1. Protection of pay and other terms and conditions of employment, including carers' leave and sickness absence. As previously stated, the local authority does not directly employ the vast majority of social care staff. It has, however, promoted the use of the infection control fund rounds for providers to utilise for this reason. Providers are monitored on whether they are paying staff as advised. Councillors continue to distribute the full infection control rounds to support frontline workers, infection control, reducing movement of staff and promoting safe visiting where permitted. National guidance on how to use the funds, our expectations and evidencing how they have spent their share in promoting the campaign to support the council aspirations continue to be embedded. And in addition to the pledge, the local health and social care partnership is actively working to prioritise vaccination to care home residents and staff and all health and care staff providing frontline face-to-face care by the end of January. And indeed, it was reported back by the Executive Cabinet member this morning that dates have gone out this week for all care homes to be vaccinated. The above provides, I hope, assurances to all members on this council of the Cabinet and the administration's and this council's commitment to our care workforce, which continues to be at the highest priority, and the steps we are taking to support them during these challenging times. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. The next question is the name of Councillor Hayes for the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 14th of October 2020, Council unanimously passed a motion registering its opposition to the Government Planning White Paper. As part of the motion, it resolved to write to the borough's members of Parliament and ask them to campaign and vote against the proposals. Can the Chief Executive please indicate what replies have been received from the members of Parliament? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I can confirm the council, for the council chamber, we have had no response to the motion.
Thank you, Chief Exec. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chief Exec. The next question, the name of Councillor Hayes for Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rather a disappointing answer, if I may say, but anyway, on to the next question. The problem with asking a question on anything to do with COVID is that the situation can change several times between the question being written and it being answered. Nevertheless, I will ask the question on the order paper and the executive member can then tell us the situation as it is at 7:20 this evening. In asking the question, can I pay tribute to all the dedicated health professionals who are moving heaven and earth to get vulnerable groups vaccinated? And the question is, the Executive Cabinet member will appreciate the importance of ensuring that all vulnerable groups receive their vaccinations against COVID-19 at the earliest possible opportunity. She will also understand that residents' concerns are increased by uncertainty. Can she therefore undertake to encourage the CCG to publish a forward programme of vaccinations for all vulnerable groups at the earliest possible moment? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me there? Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hayes. It's a very pertinent question at this time. Dr. Helen Wall, Clinical Director of Bolton CCG, as you know, has coordinated the COVID vaccination programme under national direction from NHS England. As each vaccination site receives formal authorisation and a delivery date for vaccines, we're able to announce these. Currently, a list of sites within the PCN networks has been announced in Bolton. Each of these primary care network sites is only given 7 days notice of a vaccine delivery due to the complex logistics involved. This means the CCG cannot give a forward programme as requested. The CCG is responsible for ensuring all areas of Bolton are covered by a vaccination site no more than 10 miles from where a person lives. The priority groups are care homes, residents and staff, people aged 80 plus, and health and care workers. The ambition is to offer vaccinations to people in all of these groups by the end of January 2021. The NHS nationally will then announce the next priority groups to be called. Dr. Wall and the team across Bolton are working incredibly hard to ensure we get as many people in Bolton vaccinated as possible and as quickly as possible, as the COVID vaccination gives us hope of eventually getting out of these restrictions. Some residents might receive a letter or communication directly from NHS England offering them a vaccination at a regional centre, for example the Etihad Stadium in Manchester, or even further afield. But this is just another choice, and it's their choice to make. They will be contacted to make an appointment to have the vaccine in the borough in any event. They may be in a priority group and aware that others have been vaccinated before them, but the vaccines come in batches and can't be delivered to everyone at the same time. Residents are asked to be patient. They will be offered to everyone as our supplies increase. Things are moving very fast, as you said, they're changing by the hour, and there are clear plans to step up vaccinations in all parts of the borough in the coming days. No one, we can be assured, will be left out of this. And nationally now, which is very encouraging, over 2.5 million vaccinations have been undertaken. Thank you very much, Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Another question from Councillor Hayes for the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council will note that the question I am to ask has certain similarities to the final point in the motion in my name later on the agenda. However, the agenda is such that I do have doubts whether the motion will actually be debated tonight. But I believe it is a very important point, and the population of Bolton do deserve to have a police force that's efficient and effective, and have confidence in that police force. So I don't believe the point should be delayed any further. So I'll therefore ask the question. The Leader will accept that there are really serious concerns about the performance of Greater Manchester Police amongst the residents of Bolton, and that those concerns have been confirmed by the recent report of Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, HMI CFRS. It also appears that despite warnings from HMI CFRS in 2016, 2018 and earlier in 2020, no effective action has been taken by the elected Mayor of Greater Manchester or the Deputy Mayor. Will the Leader undertake to ask the elected Mayor for a detailed report to Bolton Council indicating the action plan to return policing in the borough to an efficient and effective level? Thank you.
Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hayes, for the question. In the short form of this answer is yes, I'm very happy to undertake and ask Mayor Burnham for a detailed report to come to Bolton Council. I can certainly ask him for that. I suppose the other routes are that we have in our disposal are we have our own scrutiny, and of course the GMP recently attended our last corporate scrutiny, and I think very well dealt with the concerns which were largely expressed by what you are detailing in your question, that there is, I think we widely accept, a growing disconnect between residents and what they expect and feel they deserve from their local police force. And this is within a COVID environment as well. We all have to accept the incredible challenges that the police are encountering at the moment. And of course, their focus to some extent has been taken away onto COVID related enforcement and such items as that. Having said that, my view is that this has been happening for a considerable time now, and there has been a breakdown in what we as local residents and local elected councillors feel are our local priorities, and what are deemed to be the priorities by a wider GMP, and in specifically the priorities set at GM level under the guardianship of the mayor and deputy mayor. So I think there are problems. I have to say that I do want to put on record that the conversations that we've had with our local police, who of course have to follow the guidance set at GMP of their priorities, have been incredibly receptive when we have gone with problems. And I'm going to name one example that's very current, and following a meeting of Cabinet where the police came, and also following many comments that were made at that scrutiny that I refer to, there were real concerns raised about speeding, and that particularly during COVID it seems to have got worse, and that there are roads literally being treated like racetracks with very, very little enforced. I think we've all seen, and it's been very much covered on the GMP's Facebook pages, on their websites, that they have really made a local effort to up their ante and their enforcement on speeding in the areas. And I spoke to Rick Jackson at the weekend, and he was seeking some feedback on that, whether that was, you know, broadly accepted. And I told him on behalf, I thanked him for taking on board what we had said on this issue. So I think we have a duty as well to keep that regular contact going. They are valued partners. They are, of course, partners in our Vision Partnership. They take an active role within the Bolton family. So, and I think as well through the GM Crime and Police panel as well, and the Be Safe Partnership, these are all models that we need to keep measuring home what our local priorities are, what the residents of this town expect. They expect action to be taken on what is seen by the police, I think, wrongly as low-level crime. Crime that is such as burglary, vandalism, antisocial behaviour, off-road bikes. We know we've had many, they have actually addressed these, but after ward councillors have really worked hard to get action taken on those. So I think we need to keep the dialogue up, but I absolutely agree that we need to, it is a very worrying situation overall at GMP at the moment. It's very easily, I think that obviously the head man has gone, Ian Hopkins, but there has to be some accountability at the top for those who set the priorities. And I think this relates to your motion later on, whether we get to it or not, Councillor Hayes. There has to be some responsibility, and compared, even during a crisis, compared to what has happened and the enormity of what has happened, and we can all accept there have been cuts to the service, but GMP is in a unique position as the only police constabulary that's actually having this action taken against them and got into this rather worrying situation. I think, given all that, the amount of overall debate that has taken place since that into why it has happened in terms of detailed scrutiny and explanation has been poor. And so I'm very happy to go back and ask for that detailed report, which I hope will cover a lot of what I've tried to answer in my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Greenwalsh. The next two questions from Councillor Donaghy and Councillor Wilkinson, I propose to take those together, and Councillor Galloway will make a joint response. Okay, so the first one is Councillor Donaghy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Obviously, as the pandemic continues, we've seen the situation within the town of the closure of our schools after only one day of the start of the new term. We know the reasons for this, but it caused a great deal of confusion amongst parents and others, teachers, etc., to say the least. So my question is, and this is related to IT facilities for remote learning at present, can the Executive Cabinet member inform the Council what steps have been taken to ensure that all children in the borough have access to IT facilities for remote learning during the current lockdown? And will she agree with me that any disruption to children's education must be kept to a bare minimum? Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In following on the question that Councillor Donaghy has raised, it is on a similar vein. Everyone is well aware of the problems that schools are facing in trying to deliver online education of a good quality. It's great to see, particularly local schools, how they're achieving that, and they're doing, I think, a pretty fantastic job in the difficult circumstances they have got. And I think we need to give some praise to teachers and schools in general. However, there is the difficult side of this, that there are families who do have difficulty in having equipment to gain online learning, and also around some of the issues which the government has talked about recently about access to the internet, which is a great concern that we don't want to see children fall further behind. So could I ask the executive member, given the use of online learning during school closures and the requirements of the needs of children to have access to laptops, tablets, and also to be online, can the executive member provide information to council on how Bolton schools are coping with these new requirements, and what support has been provided by the council to ensure online learning for all children? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Donaghy and Councillor Wilkinson, for your questions. Access to remote learning for pupils has been needed since the first lockdown in March last year, and the Department of Education has already set up a range of support to ensure that disadvantaged pupils could be given a digital device. The council has helped maintain schools in securing the laptops and tablets on offer. To date, approximately 3,500 devices have been provided to children. Academy schools have been ordering their devices directly, so the total number will be much higher. With the national lockdown this year, the Department of Education has invited schools to order any additional devices that might still be needed. And also they have confirmed that all pupils without any digital access at home would be able to secure a place at school, along with critical worker children and vulnerable children. The council continues to work with schools to ensure all children are able to access remote learning if they are at home. And I am very pleased that Councillor Donaghy agrees with me that any disruption to children's education must be kept to a bare minimum during the pandemic. And I would have welcomed the Labour Group's support for the very limited reopening of schools to critical year groups back in the summer term after 3 long months of lockdown. But at the time, their leader, Councillor Peel, called on the council to change its approach and tell schools not to reopen its door to children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. The next question is Councillor Wilkinson for Councillor Haslam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think all members are well aware of the need for extremely good infrastructure. One of the problems which faces many communities is the issues of railway bridges, and in particular the railway bridge on Lee Road in Daisy Hill. This bridge has been for some years now slowly deteriorating, and it's probably rapidly deteriorating now. My worry, and the worry for many residents in West Orton and Daisy Hill, is how the sheer massive volume of traffic which uses Lee Road will be diverted around West Orton, but also the issues of what will happen with the bridge. Funding requests were made via GMCA. We seem to have been the last on the scheme, going to the DFT, which was refused. And until COVID additional infrastructure funds, COVID were put forward, we weren't going to make much progress. My concern is the regard to the amount of funding which is available, roughly some 3.5 million. And once the bridge is started to be dismantled, or when the project gets underway, whether there is sufficient funds. I understand that the tenders will be returned mid-March. My question is in relation, will the council have fully support the scheme in case that the tenders come back above the available level of funding, which has been highlighted by the DFT grant on both Network Rail and Bolton Council? So therefore, I would like to ask the question as on the order paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Haslam.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for your question. Bolton Council was successfully awarded 2.5 million from the DFT in July for the Daisy Hill Station Bridge. The figure awarded was actually 2.5 million and not the 3 million that the councillor quotes in his question, although of course the council would gratefully accept the 3 million. In combination with this, we secured an additional 0.25 million from Network Rail. We are currently in discussions with Network Rail to try and increase their contribution on the grounds that the proposed scheme involves making a substantial investment in what is actually their structure. Any funding shortfall will be provided through the existing mainstream capital maintenance grant awarded to the council and any specific highway reserves that we can identify. The alternative plan B would simply not to repair the bridge and close it to traffic. The proposed grant level of support provides a one-off opportunity to reduce costs associated with repairing the bridge and is therefore an offer that we must utilise. The alternative plan B would be completely unacceptable to me, to this administration, and more importantly for the residents for whom this bridge is essential for their lifestyles. This is therefore a good news story for Bolton about this grant, and one that this administration has been instrumental in pressing for and I'm delighted to receive. And special thanks must be given to the Bolton Highways officers and the local MP Chris Green, who have been unceasing in their efforts in lobbying for this money. This was, of course, after the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, which of course is Labour dominated, had put the scheme 9th in their list of 9 schemes which they presented for funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haslam. Next question in the name of Councillor McGeehan for Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. Whilst this year has been very difficult with COVID issues and recent bad weather, the matter of missed bin collections is extremely frustrating for local residents. and it seems to be an historical one, especially for residents of parts of Daisy Hill in West Orton. Can the executive member indicate what the reasons are for this ongoing issue of missed bin collections? And can clearer information be provided to the residents and not just operational issues? Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Thank you, Councillor McGeehan. Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor McGeehan for her question and for acknowledging that bin collection service has had to overcome many challenges whilst continuing to deliver such an important service in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. More recently, the impact of inclement weather on waste and recycling collections over the Christmas and New period has also impacted on the bin collections at a time of when collections over Christmas and New at a time of when we were already forced to adjust scheduled collections due to COVID-19. I must say the commitment and flexibility shown by our waste collection staff have been first class, making themselves available over the weekends to ensure to the greatest extent practically possible that our residents have their bins collected in a timely manner. I do, however, acknowledge that over the course of a year, even in more normal circumstances, there are inevitably bins which are missed for a variety of reasons. There is always a balance to be struck between reassuring residents that we are aware that their bin has not been emptied, confirming our intention to provide a recovery collection and providing specific reasons for non-collection. Where we do have recurring issues, for example, obstructed access, the waste management team will engage directly with local residents. The term operational issues covers a multitude of reasons for bins being unemptied, including inclement weather, roadworks, vehicle obstruction, inconsiderate parking by residents preventing safe access for our waste collection vehicles, and of course vehicle breakdown. More specifically, I would like to make the following comments. With regard to inclement weather between the 31st of December and the 6th of January, our waste and recycling teams have been at the mercy of snow and ice, which inevitably led to a number of missed collections. Quite simply, the highway and ground conditions were too dangerous to safely operate a full laden waste collection vehicle and to collect bins from the curbside. Whilst our teams continued to service main roads bus routes, which were gritted as part of our winter maintenance plan, some side streets are not gritted and were far more treacherous, bringing out the inevitable slip, trip, fall and collision risks. Upon arriving at each location, our teams therefore conducted a dynamic risk assessment, and if road or street is deemed to be unsafe, the name of the road street is recorded, published on our website, and we commit to return within 48 hours wherever possible. Unfortunately, this was not always possible over the Christmas period due to the road pavement conditions remaining icy, and officers were also aware that there was a small number of roads that were not captured in the daily website report. With regards to roadworks and resident parking, access issues have been exacerbated due to COVID-19. In particular, the number of people at home throughout the day has increased significantly, and because of this, our waste collection teams are confronted with more parked cars and vehicles. This is not unique to Daisy Hill. It is a borough-wide issue and has prevented the service with a range of challenges over the last 9 months. Navigating parked vehicles and carefully moving bins between parked cars has resulted in a reduced team productivity rates and on occasion outstanding work at the end of the day. To reduce the impact on collection round performance over the last 6 months, our teams have adopted a more proactive approach and regularly negotiate the removal of cars in conjunction with the householders. We have also introduced numerous communal collection points to reduce access issues and provide a timely service to our residents. The final comment I want to make is in relation to vehicle breakdowns. Inevitably, when you manage and operate a large vehicle fleet, mechanical failure is a risk and results in some vehicles being taken off-road. We also experience periods of downtime associated with vehicle damage, service, MOT preparation and test, scheduled repairs and movements of vehicles off-site for specialist repair. A key issue for the council is the age of the current refuse collection fleet. A number of our vehicles are now 10 years old, and reliability and breakdowns are therefore a much higher risk. That said, our fleet management team continue to prioritise fleet vehicles for repair and turn them around as quickly as possible within the resources we have available. I can also reassure members that I've approved the replacement of 21 refuse vehicles last year, and a tender opportunity is scheduled to be advertised this week via the Procurement Partnership Limited Framework Agreement. Whilst the new vehicles are not expected to arrive until the back end of the year due to the timeline of procurement and the subsequent build time, this will increase vehicle reliability. These vehicles will also support the Council's developing climate change strategy due to their improved emissions performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Heslop, question for Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members should have received an email detailing a map of the ward of Kersley, which shows the farm part of the ward along with the Kersley part of the ward. First question, at the full council meeting of the 2nd December, the deputy lead stated that a significant amount of the £16 million will be going into his ward, albeit the farm with part of it. This £16 million, of course, refers to the £12 million top slicing of the £100 million Bolton master plan loan, along with £4 million proceeds from the sale of land in the borough, including Kersley's land. The residents of Bradford Street, Long Causeway and Frederick Street areas of Farnworth in the Kersley ward are naturally intrigued by this announcement. Indeed, this has led to 2 questions from residents in the Farnworth part of Kersley ward who have requested further information about this investment. Could the deputy leader clarify for those residents and other residents in the ward of Kersley exactly where and on what this significant amount of £16 million is going to be spent in the Kersley ward? Thank you very much.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Heslop, for the question. I find it very encouraging, Madam Mayor, indeed uplifting that residents in the streets named in the question take such an interest in our online meetings and are prepared to discuss what is said with Councillor Heslop. Given such interest, Madam Mayor, I only think it is proper I give a little bit of an update on where we are as regards Farnworth Town Centre. All those people who have worked so hard and collaboratively on the Farnworth Town Centre project received a late Christmas present on Boxing Day, when the government announced a £13.3 million investment via the future High Street funding bid into Farnworth Town Centre. This enormous boost to the regeneration of Farnworth Town Centre is testament to the hard work of many people, not only the people in this virtual chamber, but to the officers who have worked so hard on bringing this bid forward. To the previous administration, Madam Mayor, that you were part of, who played their part in focusing upon Farnworth, to the Greater Manchester Mayor's Office, and of course to the government for backing the bid. And if I may say so, not least to Farnworth and Kersley First, that only came into existence a few years ago, but have proved the catalogue for change in their area, and whose work I'm confident will continue whoever runs the administration. The residents of Bradford Street, Long Causeway and Frederick Street will benefit enormously from this investment, as will all residents in the south east of Bolton, who shop and use Farnworth Town Centre. I know not only Councillor Heslop, but Councillor Patterson and Councillor Cunningham advocate strongly for Kersley, so I'm pleased to see investment in the A666 from Pilkington Road to Unity Brook in Kersley, starting in February, of nearly £500,000. This follows on from successful other surfacing schemes in Kersley, including Leighton Drive, Pilkington Road, Church Street and Presto Street. Further works are also programmed in for High Style Street, Mather Street, Garden Street and Grosvenor Street. Furthermore, Madam Mayor, the investment which will go into the Alderbank site will attract more than £5 million of extra resources into Kearsley, into high quality, energy efficient, affordable homes. Something I'm sure, Madam Mayor, all the residents in Kearsley will welcome. This administration takes Kearsley very seriously, and I have made it absolutely clear to officers that when we see an opportunity to bring investment into that side of the town, we should take that opportunity. £13.3 million into Farnworth doesn't just benefit Farnworth, it benefits the whole area, and I'm really thrilled for the people, not myself, but for the people who have worked so hard to make that happen. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Now, Councillor Heslop for the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the Council, this is just a short question here, and it relates to the Kearsley family. It is welcoming, of course, away from Councillor Cox that emphasis is being put on any opportunity in Kearsley. But on the back of that, I would just ask the Leader of the Council. It's on the order paper, the question, but I will read it for viewers of this. There is considerable interest, by the way, in viewing this. I had somebody ring me last night and saying that they would be watching it, so I can assure Councillor Cox there are many viewers in Kearsley watching the meetings. But anyway, I'll get on to the question. On the 12th of November 2020, I received a letter from a senior officer of Bolton Council. It was noted that at the foot of the page, Kearsley was removed from the council's All in the Family logo. Could the Leader advise this council and the people of Kearsley when and why this decision was made to remove Kearsley? Thank you very much.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I mean, I am grateful in a way that Councillor Heslop has brought this to full council, even though, as we both know, he brought this up in a meeting with myself and the Chief Executive when we met to discuss other matters only a few weeks, well, probably a few weeks ago. It was before Christmas. But I'm happy to put on record that this was just an error in a template. There is no conspiracy theory here at all. There is no hidden message here, no hidden agenda, no hidden attempt to in any way see that or treat Kearsley any less than any other part of this borough. It was a rogue template. It was a set of papers that I can assure you we've tried to hunt every single one down in the town hall that ever existed. And we will be going back, obviously, and continually. The original template was always in existence. So I really want to get that message back. It had been brought to our attention by his former colleague, Councillor Saunders, who had brought it to mind, and the Chief Executive. We gave Councillor Saunders the same apology. I'm prepared to apologise to you as well, Councillor Heslop, and pass that on to any resident of Kearsley that's been offended by this. It was a good old-fashioned error. It was a mistake, and we have, as I say, we've tried to hunt down every single part of that run that was done in error and was sent to you as well in error. So hopefully Kearsley is, as I hope you hope. There is an irony to this question, of course, as you and I can both see, Councillor Heslop, that Kearsley is restored once again to the Bolton Borough, and I hope that brings a smile to your face. As I say, there is an irony to this, as we both can appreciate, but yes, long may it remain proudly with the rest of the other names at the bottom of our brand, on the bottom of our council paper. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Greenhalgh. Next question, the name of Councillor Wilkinson for Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think all members of the council will be well aware of the issues around mental health and the severe nature which can result from mental health, sadly, in some cases, in death. It happens in the industry I work in, where people sadly take their lives, and it has a devastating impact on many people. The current situation we're in with COVID is increased those issues, not just in the sense of loneliness, but also people being confined, really creating situations of domestic violence, etc., but also mental health issues. And could I ask the executive cabinet member, could the member inform council what the current position is in regarding the mental health caseload affecting residents of the borough, especially young people, and what measures and extra resources have been put in place to support those who need help? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Baines.
I'm just waiting for the red box. No. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson, for this really important question at this time. Firstly, if I may give you a succinct summary of the strategic mental health offer for the borough, which is commissioned by Bolton CCG. We collaborate with Greater Manchester Mental Health and 1 Point VSE, which is a voluntary and community mental health services providers, to provide holistic support and services under our partnership model. Funding is top sliced from the public health budget. The public health team are leading by offering a population-based mental health and mental wellbeing programme, which aims to meet national and regional directives, such as the National Suicide Prevention Strategy 2019 and the GM Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy called Refresh in 2020. Under the leadership of Dr. Helen Lowy and the public health team, we have produced a 3-year mental wellbeing programme for our Bolton residents. Its governance is via the ACP board, and the vision is that everyone, irrespective of where they live in our borough, has good mental health and wellbeing. And we aim to work collaboratively with providers to achieve measurable improvements. The expertise of the public health team, together with the creation of the new JSNA, is helping to drive the offer forward. 8 key interventions and activities have been generated and are currently in the process of being developed, which includes community engagement, a mental health digital offer for adults, and mental health capacity building. Our overall mental health rates are currently comparable to others across the GM conurbation, as reported on the PH Fingertips reporting tool. We have created a suicide prevention board, which will shortly be incorporated into the mental health board to further support its work. Our Bolton Children's Board is also moving forward to strengthen the offer to children and young people by utilising the findings of the Mental Health of Young People in England 2020 Wave 1 follow-up document to the 2017 survey. Much has been achieved to date, including a booklet of support agencies and resources that have been produced in both hard copy and electronic format to signpost those in need, together with an app for younger people. The COVID pandemic has impacted on mental health services for adults and the young for many, many reasons, and we have seen a drop in non-urgent referrals to CAMS, our child and adolescent mental health services, but a significant increase in urgent mental activity during the pandemic. Did not attend rates or DNA rates for appointments have improved by 14% in October, which is reassuring. The number of children and young people in Bolton accessing mental health treatment is currently above the plan by 130, and children and young people's mental health services, or CYP, has a 20 to 21 forecast of 38% against the 35% national target. We are providing a virtual offer for those in need, together with phone calls and therapy online. and some face-to-face contact is also being offered as per GMMH Safe COVID practice. I hope this answers your question some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Next question is Councillor Wilkinson to Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I just say thanks to Councillor Baines for that detailed answer. I think it might be useful if we could have maybe some signposting for members about mental health related issues and services, whether that could be looked at. Just in relation now, moving on to my question to Councillor Cox. SAMP obviously is a big issue for the council, and it will be for all ward members in relation to the individual items coming forward in SAMP. There are one or two things which I think might be useful. In part of the question I want to relate to is around trees, and just as I'm sat here, popped on my phone, sponsored ad from Bolton Council about the fight against climate change, and I always thought climate change involved trees, so maybe it's quite apt that you've Bolton Council sent me an ad at this moment in time. I think it's just about clarity about SAMP, and there will be probably more questions as we go over the next few weeks and months around SAMP issues, and that is around whether sites are in the allocations plan already, or the new sites. The issue around trees is important because obviously we've seen the fiasco of the site in Orwich, where a number of trees were cut down until an emergency TPO was put on by the executive member, which causes great concern to local residents. So I would think it may be a useful tool to actually ask when we are disposing of sites, particularly which are basically at the moment greenfield sites, that the tree officers are asked to look at these sites and identify tree issues, because we don't want to see any more sites which are maybe sold and someone come along with a chainsaw literally the day after. So I would like to ask the executive member the question as stated on the order paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bolton.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and to Councillor Wilkinson for the question. In regards to future consultation with members, I think Councillor Wilkinson makes a fair point, and I will ask officers to make it clear if future sites are allocated or new sites. Furthermore, given what happened in Medway Road, officers will in future be asked to consider the need for tree preservation orders for the sites in question prior to disposal. Nobody wants to see a repeat of what happened there. When it comes to disposing of assets, officers have been instructed very clearly to follow the council's policy, which is to allow a 20-day consultation period with ward members. Something I'm very pleased to say many councillors have engaged in a constructive manner, and to date it's been a very useful exercise. Further to that, we have received a considerable number of emails and calls from town councillors who have been as keen today to engage in the process. And speaking as a town councillor, I am pleased this is taking place. I'm also quite prepared to formalise this consultation process with town councils by including town councillors through the town clerk in future consultation processes because they often have a lot to offer and a good knowledge of the local areas. I've from the start of the SAMP, I've encouraged members to get involved with it, and I am pleased to say so far most members have done that in a very constructive manner. I've made it clear from the start with SAMP there's going to have to be some difficult decisions taken, but they must follow a proper process. Councillors must feel that they are part of that, and to date, Madam Mayor, I'm very pleased that councillors have indeed fully engaged with that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Next question is from Councillor Dean to Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Now, this is a discussion that we've had at council before. This issue has been raised by a number of colleagues. It is an area where the government has listened to people. It's positive for the women and young women of our town. So I'd like to ask the executive member to join me in congratulating the government who have abolished tax on women's sanitary products. Thank you.
Councillor Baines.
Just waiting for the red box. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dean. Absolutely, I'll join you in congratulating the government for this. The Chancellor announced that the tampon tax, as it's got known to be called, was to be abolished from the 1st of January 2021, and he announced that at the March 2020 budget. As the transition period ended on December 31st, the UK is no longer bound by the EU VAT directive, which mandates a minimum of 5% tax on sanitary products. They are now zero rated for VAT. The move is estimated to save the average woman about £40 during her lifetime, as a pack of 12 sanitary pads will now be about 5p cheaper. We join India, Australia and Canada in abolishing VAT, as we now see these products as essential ones and not luxury items as perceived by the EU community. This is part of a wider government initiative to end period poverty, which includes providing free sanitary products in schools, colleges and hospitals, and is welcomed for women. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Chief Exec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There were no questions under Standing Order 9(c), so the next item of business is to deal with the minutes of the proceedings of the Planning Committee.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I beg to move the proceedings of the minutes of the proceedings of the Planning Committee on the 25th of November and 10th of December 2020 be approved.
Councillor Rayab.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I formally second the proceedings of the Planning Committee. Thank you.
Members, are these agreed?
Aye.
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 Chief Exec.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to deal with the minutes of the proceedings of the Licensing Committee.
Councillor Mrs Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the Council, I beg to move that the minutes and proceedings of the meeting of the Licensing and Environmental and Regulations Committee held on the 1st of December 2020 be approved.
Councillor Dean.
Madam Mayor, I formally second.
Are these agreed, members?
Aye.
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 The motion is carried. Chief Exec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next item of business is to deal with the minutes of the proceedings of the scrutiny committees.
Councillor Bagnall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. I beg to move that the minutes of the meeting of the following committees be approved. The Corporate and External Issues Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of December, the Place Scrutiny Committee on the 9th of December, the Children's Services Scrutiny Committee on the 22nd of December, and the Health Overview and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of December. Thank you.
Councillor Weatherby.
I second these. Thank you. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are these agreed, members?
Aye.
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 I think the motion is carried. Thank you. Chief Exec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next item of business is to consider items referred to Council from a scrutiny committee, and we have a motion in the name of Councillor Donaghy relating to the Harvey early years.
Councillor Donaghy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, the motion is as per the order paper. I will move the motion and then obviously I reserve my right to make my submission. So I move the motion as per the order paper that the decision be referred to this council for full consideration, including exploring the financial options, and then this to be referred back to the Exec Cab member for further consideration. I formally move the motion.
Councillor Peel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally second the motion, reserve the right to speak.
Madam Mayor, there is an amendment to consider in the name of Councillor Walsh.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wait for the red box. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the council, there are times that there are battles to be fought and victories to be won. And there are other occasions when a battle seems somewhat unnecessary and spurious. And I would beg to suggest that Councillors Donaghy and Peel, in moving and seconding this motion, have picked a battle that is actually spurious and unnecessary at the present time. This is not a proposal to close, it's a proposal to consult. And let us just look at the facts and why consultation is necessary. Consultation is necessary on such a key issue because in 2017, the then controlling Labour group took a decision that the exorbitant costs, far higher than any other costs per head of user use, were far higher than anywhere else across the council, and disproportionately so. And accordingly, took a decision to go to consultation to do exactly as is now proposed within this proposal to the executive member, and that is to consult upon the future of Harvey Nursery. Clearly not an easy decision, but of course, as we all know,
The then ruling group subsequently, and there is a timeline which is available, and I believe Councillor Donahue may have had copy of the timeline. There was a timeline that shows the Labour group then decided to put the matter onto the back burner by introducing a working group, a management group, to consider alternatives. That consideration was to look at how you could, by whatever means, legitimate means, increase usage and thus income, and contain costs and control costs, because some of the costs were totally disproportionate. And the report that went to the executive member and went to scrutiny, and we debated at scrutiny, show all of these facts. There is also a hidden line in the report which hasn't been highlighted to the same degree. That is the fact that the council offers subsidy off balance sheet, as it were, to maintain officer support and leadership, ICT and other support services. And therefore, we have moved from a situation where by not charging rent of just under £50,000, by having services of £62,000 and projected deficit of £103,000, it comes to over £200,000, compared to losses of £57,000 against £103,000 current. So it clearly was a case that the past and finished group, the management group, whatever title you want to give it, set up with that dual challenge, has failed to come up with adequate and proper solutions. We now have a situation where usage is actually lower now than it was in 2017. Now, I know Councillor Donaghy and others may well argue that that's because there was a freeze on new admissions. There was for a time, suspended whilst that review took place. That freeze was lifted, but there has not been an increase in usage. In fact, there has been a reduction in usage over the period from 300 sessions to 286, 44% to 42%. The figures are there in the report, unless anybody can disprove it. I stand by those figures. The second fact that's got to be considered is that in the Great Lever, Runworth, Halliwell areas, that central core of the borough, there are already a surplus of places in similar establishments, and therefore no child would be disadvantaged or displaced if the consultation were to suggest and confirm that closure was an appropriate option. I think it's important, therefore, that the consultation process takes place, as the executive member suggested, with the pertinent facts put forward, that this unit is costing something around £600 plus per user session against a break-even across other parts of the borough. Is it fair, I ask, that a disproportionate sum be expended, in this case best part of £200,000, on a single provision, when other adequate provision, high standard quality provision, can be provided for children across the area as across the rest of the borough? And for that reason, I think that yes, the consultation should take place. Don't demur from Councillor Donaghy in the sense that he, as a member of the controlling group at that time, along with Councillor Peel, agreed on consultation in the first instance in 2017, albeit they then ducked the issue in 2018. So for that reason, Madam Mayor, I hope the Council tonight will recognise that this is about consultation, it is about acquiring all the appropriate facts, and that for that reason, I would beg to move an amendment that the Council is asked to note the decision to send the proposal to close Harvey Nursery out to consultation. Consultation, and then Councillor Donaghy come back and argue for or against that consultation in terms of responses that come back from it. That is time to have the discussion. That's the time to have the serious debate. But let's have a public.
Walsh, you had over 5 minutes.
I beg to move the amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. You did just have over 5 minutes then. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I second the amendment that Councillor Walsh has put forward. As members of the council, we need to make sensible decisions, sensible financial decisions. We generally have to look at all our finances with our head and not always with our hearts. In December, when this issue was brought to children's scrutiny, the committee voted for Councillor Walsh's amendment, and I hope full council will do the same tonight. I'm not going to go into the fine details of the financial issues that Councillor Walsh has gone into, but one of the things that I would like to highlight is the fact that if we continue to support this failing project, it's going to cost the council £1 million over the next 5 years, and this comes at a crucial time where we're being asked to save £36 million. So all children will be offered alternative places at nurseries that are performing well. This is yet another failed project that needs to be looked at carefully. The business plan hasn't worked, and I urge everyone to support the amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, I have several speakers now. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I read the council cabinet papers from the past years on Harvey Nursery. I know who was responsible for what and the stop on admissions issue. I read the more recent papers, listened to the arguments of the scrutiny committee and read the Save the Harvey Nursery campaign statements. You're already shouting down Labour for failing to address the finance issues of Harvey Nursery when in power, aren't you? But let me say this to the Tories, to the Lib Dems and to UKIP. Even if you think Labour did not do the things you think should have been done, are you just going to shout down Labour, call Labour out, or are you going to be interested in how to solve issues? If any of you know how to run services, why do you not want to approach this differently now? Forget the timeline for a minute. A small provider service needs to stand on its own 2 feet financially. What does it need? It needs marketing and it needs service growth. To do both of those things, you need a couple of people with skill in those subjects. If you believe that has not hitherto been done, then do it. Of course, I'm not some imbecile on the council finances. I know finance in terms of cost secure provider services. Don't look to committee or working group. Employ skill. Plans need people with certain skills. Action it and get busy. Labour believes that state nurseries embody all that is excellent in early years and that they have a proven track record on closing the attainment gap between rich and poor children. That we have a Bolton born and bred government social mobility commissioner here in Saeed Atcher in Bolton should attract us as councillors to read the Social Mobility Commission's reports so that we know more how we can help toddlers in the early years and then the school years transform children's lives out of hardship. The sustainability of private providers of nurseries in the Bolton Borough, in Great Lever, in Runworth, in Harper Green, is not guaranteed. The government should be supporting the footprint of state nurseries in deprived areas, in particular where the government's own statements make clear it knows the impact of good childcare and good early years learning can transform these children's lives because good nursery helps to create school-ready children. It's not these children's faults that they have parents who dropped out of school themselves, may suffer with mental health, may have had a hard life. I back state nurseries. It's not the children's fault that they need good services like this. If the market of private nurseries is fragile for the foreseeable future, all types of businesses sadly closing in our towns, services for young children need protecting. Conservatives should commit tonight to using some of your God-given clever minds to find the marketing and the service growth skill that is needed. Break your minds free from the falsehood that there is nothing you can do now. Announce a reprieve for the nursery as soon as you can.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Flitcroft.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The officer's report that was presented at the Executive Cabinet Members meeting in October of 2018 included the plan proposed for the nursery to become financially stable through various ways has to be given a decent chance and give Harvey's a fair crack of the whip. As I see it, over the last 10 months, this pandemic hasn't allowed this to happen. I really do think we should give Harvey's a bit of leeway and allow them time to put their plans fully into action. I feel it is unfair to go to consultation during this dreadful time. I will be supporting this motion by Councillor Donaghy.
Thank you, Councillor Flitcroft. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm speaking against the amendment, obviously. As a long-serving member of this council, and some may say even an old codger, I'm not right sure, but can I crave your indulgence and take you a little trip down memory lane, and particularly for the newer members of this council and newer senior management. This great town of ours has always been innovative in its vision, especially in its narrowing the gap initiatives. It's called the Bolton Way, and every child matters to us. We have always been at the forefront, particularly for the care and education of our 0 to 5-year-old provision. And it was pioneered long ago by 3 citizens of this town, Susan Isaacs, Gladys Harvey and Dorothy Fowle, all passionate for under 5 provision and specialty training for staff. Your history lesson's over now. I'll get on to the Harvey. There's been childcare on this site in Shaw Street for over 80 years and is the last council-run nursery in Bolton and is in a ward where 55% of households live in poverty. And Councillor Walsh, that is not a spurious statement. It's absolutely true. It was rebuilt in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and became the flagship and prototype for all children's centres. So the proposals for closure were mooted in 2017-18, but these were shelved. And now here we are again. This town has a brilliant reputation for partnership working. So why haven't we made good use of it? Why wasn't St Peter and Paul's Primary School just across the street not approached to consider extending its nursery provision? Did we approach the university or the college? Because they already have some children there from the staff. Were staff asked if they were willing to form a cooperative and be more viable? Did we ask Bolton Cares if it wanted the opportunity to run the nursery? And did anyone approach other providers to consider running this? And can I just say before I move on that they were submitted, those 5 statements, during the last consultation by me. But the worst of all, which is the 6th one, is that did we ever share or discuss these plans with our own regeneration team who've been working on town centre developments such as the Ridgeway site, Church Wharf, Trinity Gateway, Arndale, and more recently the YMCA and old post office buildings for quite some time now. And all these developments are within half a mile of the Harvey. Where's our vision or our forward thinking gone? In my humble opinion, this closure is definitely premature, and I urge you to support us for the sake of our children, our parents, our staff and our reputation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'd just like to talk about the 2-year-old provision. This provision was brought in by the Tory government after they had disseminated the Sure Start programme, which was one of the most imaginative and forward-thinking programmes that the Labour government had put in place to improve children's lives. This provision gives 2-year-old children the same amount of free childcare as 3- and 4-year-olds, which equates to 30 hours per week for 38 weeks of the year if their parents are in receipt of financial support. The 2-year-olds, however, have additional provision for looked after children, children with special needs, children on a health and care plan, children leaving care on an adoption order, and those whose parents are in receipt of disability living allowance. Approximately 1,500 2-year-olds are eligible for this provision in Bolton, but because not all the locations are covered, there are still some children missing out on what they are entitled to. Taking on board these facts, I have asked why St Peter and Paul's School wasn't approached regarding 2-year-old provision, considering that the Working Party was supposed to be looking into how the Harvest Centre nursery could be successful and financially viable. This council supports many businesses that are not financially viable, but are seen to be good in a long term. Perhaps the controlling party need to have the same clear vision when it comes to the vulnerable in Bolton and stop clouding over their needs and punishing by withdrawing services from the council. I will quote Oscar Wilde, who said of a cynic, someone who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. Perhaps we can add Bolton's Tory councillors to that list as the people with no long-term vision except letting sales of everything for profit, whether it is needed or not. And also I'd like to add that 75% of nurseries are never full, and you know, it's not always profitable of every nursery in the country either. But what is important is providing what people need and what they want as a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherrington. Councillor McKeon.
Madam Mayor, sorry, it's Councillor Peel. I've just had a message from Councillor McKeon. Oh, he's on.
Councillor Sherrington, can you turn your camera off? Councillor McKeon.
Apologies, Madam, my computer went off. Can I first of all clarify the nature of this consultation? My understanding is that the Cabinet have made a decision to close the nursery, and we'll all note on the report it says keeping it open is not an option. The consultation in question is the statutory consultation with staff members. So I think that, I hope that provides some clarity. I'm sorry, I need to so apologies for that. Madam Mayor, members of the council, I don't imagine anyone on this call wants to close Harvey Nursery. This debate in really isn't about the nursery. If it was, we'd be focusing on educational outcomes, curriculum development and development goals. In reality, we're talking about money, specifically the £103,000, which is the cost to the council of sustaining the nursery. But rather than cost, I want to talk about value, but not the value of the nursery and its provision, because I think that's accepted by all. Although I was a bit shocked at Councillor Dean's use of the term failed project. The value also of the staff. A significant proportion of the £103,000 we're discussing is accounted for by staff wages, terms and conditions. Because the staff at Harvey enjoy council terms and conditions, these are significantly better than they would receive in the private sector. Applying council terms and conditions means inevitably that the costs of running the nursery are higher than those of a private nursery, while the income per child will be the same. But I need to point out that private nurseries, if they could, would love to increase the pay of their staff. What prevents them is the inadequacy of the government grants that fund places. An organisation of nurseries called Champagne Nurseries on Lemonade Funding puts this argument really strongly in its very name. Because the vast majority of nurseries are privately run, the vast majority of nursery staff get inadequate remuneration for the work they do. So this brings us to this issue of value. Later in the meeting, we'll discuss the remuneration of care workers, and I'm sure we'll agree that the value of the work done by care workers is deserving of much improved pay. COVID has highlighted the warped values in our society, which prizes the work of financiers in the city, but undervalues the work of all those that we've come to be called key workers. And to my mind, nursery staff are key workers who provide an essential service. The council should take pride in the fact that at Harvey, it does demonstrate its recognition of the value of nursery staff by supporting decent terms and conditions. So let's take the decision this evening to keep Harvey Nursery open, not least as a beacon of value and exemplary employment practices. And I'd like just briefly to mention a practical point. If this council does decide to go down the route of closure, I'd make a plea that the closure is done at a natural breaking point in the year, that is at the end of the academic year. In the report, a date in March is suggested. Surely this is unacceptable. It gives parents very little time to make alternative arrangements. In July or August, the oldest children in the nursery will be leaving naturally to start in reception classes. So if the worst were to happen and Harvey were to close, that surely is the point when it should take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKeon. Councillor Ayoub.
Yeah. Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council. Here we are trying to persuade the council to deliver on the first Bolton council vision, which is start well, by backing the only council-run nursery in Bolton. We were in a similar situation in 2017. We worked hard and managed to persuade the listening Labour-run council to keep in the nursery going at that time. At that time, recommendations were made to the nursery in order to improve on its outcome and to become self-sufficient. Reading through the report since the implementation of the recommendations in 2019-20, there was a reduction in the deficit from the previous year. The deficit, which was reduced from 77,321 to 50,667.
Yes.
This equates to a 34% reduction in deficit. This shows clearly that the nursery was moving in the right direction and on its way to become self-sufficient. Heading the right direction, the nursery was looking to have a better year in 2020-21 and reducing the deficit even further. However, this is when the UK was hit with a devastating pandemic, COVID-19. Meant all nurseries had to close and no children would be attending the nurseries. Not only did the pandemic halt the progress of the nursery, but like all business, the impact of COVID was unprecedented and profit plunged. In the report, it suggests the 2021 projection deficit to Harvey Nursery will be 103 886. I want to remind you that figure is a projection based on its current economic situation, which includes the effect of the pandemic. Just like all businesses around the country have been hit by the pandemic, so has the Harvey Nursery. Madam Mayor, I urge to the leader of Bolton Council and the officers involved in the decision making to reconsider and keep the nursery running by supporting it, just like we are supporting other businesses with grants due to the pandemic until it is self-sufficient and give them a chance to reach their full potential. Before I finish, I want to remind the councillors to think about the message that will be sent out by the council to the public by not being able to save the only council-run nursery.
Hello.
During
I know I can't turn it off.
COVID-19.
Someone turn it off at your end.
I urge members to vote in support of this motion to save the Harvey Nursery. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ayoub. Councillor McKeon, could you possibly mute your microphone and turn your camera off? You've now frozen. Okay, right. The next speaker then is Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to support the amendment. In the present economic climate with the pandemic and the lockdown, it is impossible to justify continuing to subsidise the one council-run nursery in the borough by over £100,000 a year when there is the surplus of high-quality private childcare places in the local area. There are around 57 children on the roll at the moment, and the direct cost borne by the Bolton council taxpayer for each child is over £2,000. And you have to ask why, when there is plenty of alternative private provision locally, which does not need to be subsidised by our council taxes. The children are certainly not all from deprived households. At the nursery, there are a lot of parents who work at the university, which is nearby. The nursery has been running at a deficit for some time, and it was 3 years ago that the Labour-run administration approved the same proposal to close Harvey Nursery and put it out to consultation, before preempting it and deciding to mount a doomed rescue bid. Back then, the deficit was just over half what it is now, and they were not dealing with a global pandemic, which requires savings in the council budget. So it is baffling that they are now not even wanting the proposal to go out to consultation. The Labour administration was involved in every stage of the process of trying to make the nursery financially viable, from the setting up of the Collaborative Management Committee to the approval of the business plan with its recommendations on staffing and fees. The plan has been given nearly 2 years to work. There appears to be an attempt now to suggest that this business plan wasn't correct or that the recommendations weren't carried out properly. However, the actions were all implemented. The reason that the nursery has failed to be financially viable is that no business plan was realistically going to be able to make it work. Being an early years provider is financially challenging. It is very labour intensive and subject to strict statutory requirements. The figures for Harvey show that staffing is about 95% of the allocated direct costs. They were reduced as recommended in the business plan by cutting down on agency staff. However, as it is a council-run service, as Councillor McEwen has alluded to, local authority pay scales are higher than rates that private providers pay staff, and there are the benefits and pension, and it makes it so difficult for Harvey to work financially. The other major factor making the nursery unviable is its low occupancy rates. The business plan only worked on the assumption that there was 75% occupancy. And as we've heard, occupancy in the last 2 years is 42%. A very comprehensive marketing strategy was carried out in the last 2 years. Facebook page, leaflet drops, open days, information packs. However, it is an incredibly competitive sector. There are 47 early year providers in the catchment area, with most having spare capacity. Harvey is an excellent nursery with dedicated staff and is rated good by Ofsted, but there are equally high quality providers in the area, including ones that are Ofsted rated outstanding. The council has the duty to support all such providers who are especially struggling during the lockdown, and opening the consultation will give them a voice. The occupancy rate for 3 to 4 year olds at Harvey's is especially low, at around a third. Parental preference has increasingly been in favour of nursery settings in primary schools. It's a way of getting their child used to the transition to primary school. So there are major challenging factors which are causing Harvey to struggle financially, and to suggest that the answer should be to devise yet another business plan is not being responsible with council money. Labour's flawed decision in 2017 to delay the inevitable and keep the nursery open for another 2.5 years has directly cost Bolton taxpayers over £200,000, money that could have been better spent. The proposal to close this service should go to consultation. I support the amendment. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry for that technical hitch. Sorry, I'm saying this, Chief, because it was on the screens, in case anyone's wondering. The computer just collapsed. Sorry. I'm just saying that as well, in case Councillor Galloway didn't think that I was listening, being attentive to what she said. Councillor Zaman.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Obviously, I am not going to support this amendment, but there were two key factors that Councillor Galloway kind of failed to mention, and I wanted to make sure that those two facts are kind of factored into this this debate. So there was a working group set up to look into the viability and the feasibility of Harvey Nursery, but then the management decided to freeze admissions whilst the working group was working up options and looking into the viability of this service. And secondly, the working group ended prematurely, and it should have been allowed to continue until it had achieved its objectives. So those are the sort of 2 points that I wanted to add to the debate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Zaman. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I hadn't intended to speak on this motion, but I'm persuaded to do so by some of the arguments that I've heard. Councillor Galloway has already raised the issue of costs, and I'd like to perhaps repeat some of those, but with a slightly different slant. Council taxpayers in Bolton recognise, or most do anyway, and I certainly do, recognise that it is a tax, and the purpose of a tax largely is to provide services, but also to provide for those less fortunate. In other words, to provide extra incentives for deprived areas. And I absolutely support that, and I'm sure council taxpayers do as well. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? But council taxpayers do expect value for money for the tax that they're paying. And in this case, it seems unlikely the Harvey nursery will ever, under its present system of management, it seems unlikely it will ever provide value for money. And I am talking about value, not cost. But it seems unlikely it will ever provide value for money. And that's because it is inherently so much more expensive. And it isn't just about wages. And I admire Councillor McKeon's efforts to persuade us that that all nurseries should pay more, and I wish they would. But it isn't going to happen anytime soon, let's face it. So until it does, the Harvey nursery will never ever compete. And it's not just because of wages, it's because of things like pension schemes, overheads, hidden costs and all the rest of it, all of which are very admirable, but it will never ever compete. So you can write all the business plans that you like, I'm afraid, but it will still lose money. And we've heard the figure of £103,000 losses mentioned, but really, as I think Councillor Galloway said, it is a lot more than that. It's over 200,000 when you factor in the overhead costs and pension costs and things. So really, it's never going to wipe its feet, and therefore I think it's time to put it out of its misery. Really, we've heard that there are lots of other facilities available in the area, no shortage of other nursery places. It seems, apart from a vanity project, if I may say that, it seems a bit of a waste to keep throwing money at a project which will never ever work. So I'm afraid I'll be supporting the amendment, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mrs Fairclough.
Not easy to see those red boxes, is it? Can you hear me, Mother? Right. I too wasn't intending to speak on the amendment. However, I felt that I had something to say. We do have some of the best private nurseries in the country, let alone in Bolton, and many of them are in the Great Lever area. So why wouldn't we want our children to attend them? If we're able to save a significant amount of money, then we have to make such high savings in the coming years. But that money could be used to help our disadvantaged children in so many other ways. We mustn't be afraid to give up when we find that we cannot efficiently offer a service, that a similar or better service could be provided privately. Indeed, Susan Isaacs, which was in a highly deprived area, some years ago, and I will quote directly from the then cabinet member for, I think it was Children's Services, but very similar. After much deliberation and discussion with the governing body about the nursery's funding issues and falling numbers, it became apparent that its long-term financial future was unsustainable, and therefore we are faced with no option but to explore the possibility of closure. Despite a heartening response during consultation, the situation remains that the nursery is not sustainable, and it is with great sadness that we are now in a position where we have issued a formal statutory notice to closure. So we're not strangers to this. Those children in that highly deprived area went on to other nurseries and hopefully flourished in their education. So I will be supporting the amendment because I believe that we are just as capable in the private sector of providing everything that those children need and possibly saving some money into the bargain. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The red box always seems a bit delayed, doesn't it? I think we've heard some very good arguments tonight, and I must admit our group is very split on this particular issue. I personally think it would be doubtful that the nursery will ever be financially viable and not need a significant subsidy. However, there is a feeling also that we should actually go ahead for consultation and actually see what comes back and have the argument there. But there have been some very impassioned pleas from people living in the area, and I think we do take the arguments. And I'm really just speaking to say that we will be having a free vote on this issue. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to start by saying that obviously none of these decisions are easy. And we speak, and I know that the last administration will have had some very incredibly difficult decisions to make. And I'll only be acutely aware of this. And I've listened to a number of Labour politicians tonight. Many of you, if not all of them, I have a great deal of respect for. I know they speak and they have deep principles. But what I would say to them is that when they brought this initial proposal themselves as the last Labour administration, they would have had those principles that they have argued for tonight then. And they still, as an administration, and many of those that have spoken were in that cabinet at the time. In fact, Councillor Murray, for many years, respecting Madeleine as I do, argued for the safeguarding was safeguarding cabinet member for years. Councillor Sherrington in that cabinet. Councillor McKeon, I think, was possibly in and out, but I think you were education spokesperson for a while. All of you had those principles then, and yet you listened to the arguments then about the financial situation of this nursery, and a decision was made to include it in your budget savings and to bring it forward for consultation. And that you did. And then there was a public outcry. I know how extremely hard you were lobbied. We had, as we became familiar with in those days, we had demonstrations in the gallery. And I can remember the now Mayor, Councillor Mrs Thomas, as she was back then as a cabinet member, speaking about the reversal of the decision and that they'd listened to the public. But the fact remains that given the financial situation at that time, all those Labour politicians in that last administration still put this forward to consultation and put it forward in their list of final budget options. That is what went out to consultation, and that is where the decision was then taken a step back from. So I do want to say there is a degree, I believe, of cynicism tonight. I think all people in this chamber accept that the business plan, as for the reasons that, among others, but Councillor Allen very eloquently spoke of, are flawed. And it was a business criteria that the last administration set up. And it is absolutely necessary to point out that we would in no way consider the closure of this nursery if it wasn't for, as the reasons that have been set out by Councillor Galloway, if there was not additional provision, outstanding provision actually, in that area already available. And therefore to take away at this hugely challenging time for the council in terms of its finances, a subsidy that this council taxpayer is having to make, as has been pointed out, in the region of 200,000 a year, in the region of 5 years, £1 million. And as Councillor Fairclough said, money that can be diverted into helping into children's services that is so desperately needed. This is not something that we have to find money for, but something that we could now use money additionally for better uses for children's services, and actually looking at safeguarding, looking at provision and in deprivation. So for those reasons, I hope very much that members will accept that does not come from just a purely financial basis. This comes from also a decision of understanding that there is provision for these children, outstanding provision elsewhere. And I do accept Councillor McKeon's very poignant point about the March and the August deadline. I'm sure we can take that away and give that some consideration. But as I finish where Councillor Walsh started, this is about a consultation. This is about us moving forward to understand and consult before the final decision is eventually made. So I do want to urge members to support, as they did at scrutiny, and let this move forward and be noted. And therefore I urge members to support the amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Greenosh. Thank you, Councillor Greenosh. Councillor Peel, do you wish to you reserve the right to speak? Do you wish to speak now?
I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor. It has been a really good debate, and I'm not going to repeat any of the points that my colleagues have made, but I want to open up the end of this discussion with the words of somebody else, the words of a parent who's contacted me on this issue, and it's really, really interesting to listen to this. And I quote, "The last year has been nothing short of a nightmare for working parents, with many parents being under the strain of working from home with young children and the homeschooling. During this time, the part that nurseries and schools have played has been fundamental. My husband is a key worker, and we were therefore lucky enough to receive our place for our son during the lockdown in March, which meant that we knew our son was in safe hands at Harvey's and in an environment he enjoyed. We were also aware that the nursery provided support for children of key workers of other nurseries who had to close during the lockdown. This is something we've not been told, members. Harvey Nursery took these children in, which we are certain meant that key worker parents could go to work with a peace of mind of knowing their child was looked after and had care. Nursery closures for a lot of parents during that time led to panic and anxiety, and Harvey Nursery aided in easing those emotions. To force closure of the nursery during a time of uncertainty and in the midst of a global pandemic where families are under considerable pressure is insensitive and could have draconian consequences. It will leave parents with the additional pressure of working with the nursery to find alternative childcare in the midst of a pandemic and during a time when there are considerable other strains on families. I appreciate the nursery may not be operating at capacity, but what councillors supporting the closure of the nursery are failing to understand is that the plan proposed by the nursery to make it more financially stable and increase its numbers had been during a pandemic when many parents have been made redundant, many have not returned to work, and employment numbers have dropped. Consequently, the number of parents seeking childcare has inevitably dropped. To judge the nursery on whether or not it is financially viable in the midst of what has been the toughest year in business for businesses across the world is nonsensical. Now, Madam Mayor, nobody could disagree with the words of that parent expressed there, but I do understand that some councillors are arguing that the nursery is surplus to requirements. So let me address that. Before you vote, I would ask you to consider and please listen to some key facts of what we know already. Firstly, the nursery sector has been singled out by the government to remain open in recognition of the key role they play in ensuring key workers can attend work. Unless the government do another U-turn, this will remain the case. Secondly, the private nursery sector nationally is already suffering from serious financial difficulties due to a variety of reasons, but the main reason being large numbers of former customers are now working from home. This, as we know, has been going on and off for nearly a year, but it's having huge consequences to nursery balance sheets. A recent report has stated that post-COVID, as much as 25% of the UK workforce will still be working from home. In addition, another report yesterday stated that due to the current lack of government grants to support the half-empty private nurseries, as many as 19,000 private nurseries nationally could close within the next 6 months. Therefore, to compare the uptake of Harvey Nursery with others in the same catchment area and to talk of surplus places gives a completely misleading story. If the private nursery sector goes under, then it will be the case that Harvey will end up taking a considerable amount of new children from private nurseries which are no longer viable. Even if the government closed the nurseries within the next week, it may well be the case that when they are allowed to reopen, Harvey's is one of the few left standing because it is a council nursery. So to close this nursery in March, when, as we all know, we'll still be in the thick of the pandemic, is extremely short-sighted. If anyone here really believes, as I do, that we have a long, long way to go before we see the end of this pandemic, then they should vote for this motion. And finally, Madam Mayor, the report that was considered by Cabinet and by scrutiny talks of the nursery in a pre-COVID world. All the arguments about its financial viability, whether you accept them or not, are now more and more irrelevant in the reality of the COVID climate we live in. We ask the Council to think again, to think of this nursery as an increasingly vital service that will assist in the task of ensuring that key workers can continue to attend work. Finally, Madam Mayor, if we win this vote tonight, I would ask that the Cabinet respect the wishes of Council. However, if we lose this vote tonight, then I appeal to Councillor Greenhalgh and the Conservative group to do this at the very least. At the very least, do not even think of doing anything with this nursery whilst we're still dealing with this destructive pandemic. Because in the final analysis, closing this nursery now is only going to make things much worse for key workers, and the Council is going to have to pick up the bill on that eventually and sort that out. Please vote for the motion. Please keep this nursery open. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. Councillor Donaghy, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thanks to everyone who has contributed to this debate. Just a few points I wanted to run over on the question of the amendment. The proposition that was placed before the Executive Cabinet member is the closure of Harvey Nursery. That is what the consultation is about. I am not here to suggest it's a cosmetic exercise, but to many people this is cut and dried. The consultation is in name only. The trade unions have been informed of this, but not through the normal consultative mechanisms, just a basic, this is what's happening. Could I just say on the marketing of Harvey Nursery, just to give members a flavour of the marketing strategy that was talked about? Well, this is what it consisted of. There was a leaflet drop in the surrounding streets around that nursery in August of 19. A Facebook was set up in that month, late August. There was an open day at the nursery in November 19. A brochure was produced in the second week of March of 2020, just as national lockdown began. Banners were then produced in August of 2020. No website has ever been set up for this nursery. The nursery, as part of the recommendation, was supposed to trade as a traded service. Now, as you know, and members of the council know, a traded service should produce books every 12 months for inspection to let us know how it's going on. No such undertaking has ever happened. JOGs, the process through which the trade unions are informed of decisions in the authority. At no JOG meeting, and I repeat, at no JOG meeting, were the trade unions ever given an update on the position, financial or sustainable or otherwise, regarding this nursery. The first sight they had of the report was the report that I seen at the end of November 2020 with the closure recommendation. Colleagues have already said that the collaborative working group, which I pay tribute to, and they worked extremely hard, but isn't it strange that at a time when the nursery hadn't achieved its aims and objectives, that the working group was stood down? Surely the working group was needed even more then to police the nursery, to keep an eye on the progress of the nursery and to make recommendations accordingly. The most recent Ofsted report at the end of November, beginning of December 2020, suggests without any equivocation all nurseries, both private and public, are struggling at the moment due to the obvious current emergency that we're going through. I have to ask members of council just to look into your conscience and say this to yourself. Do you think, and Councillor Flitcroft, thank you because you touched on it, do you think this nursery has been given a fair and fighting chance for survival? I've referred to the market strategy. At no time was the DWP, for example, approached as to the provision of nursery here. At no time was members and staff of Bolton Council approached. At no time were other major employers in the town approached. At no time did anyone look at the long term and say, with the new build that will be coming to Bolton, we all know we're going to need new infrastructure and facilities such as medical facilities, possibly another primary school, etc. And the nursery. So members of the council, if you feel or you have any doubt in your mind that Harvey Nursery has not been given a fair crack of the whip in as far as its ability to generate income and to generate numbers, which I suggest is the case, then please support my motion. I urge all of you to think outside the political box tonight and look to the future, not only of a nursery that is recommended as outstanding, not only a nursery that has a devoted and passionate staff team, but also for the children, not only who are at the nursery now, but for the future generations to come, who will be proud to say, I went to Harvey Nursery and I got my start in life there. Members of the council, please support my resolution to council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaghy. The Chief Executive will now take the name vote on Councillor Walsh's amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, just to say this is Councillor Walsh's amendment. So here we go. Councillor Baines.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Cunningham.
For, can you hear me there, Chief?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Galloway.
For.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
For.
Councillor Haslam.
For.
Councillor Hewitt.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Muslim.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Waters.
For.
Councillor Abdullah.
Against.
Councillor Adia.
Against.
Councillor Ayub.
Against.
Councillor Donaghy.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Howarth.
Against.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Against.
Councillor Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Karam.
Against.
Councillor McKeon. Councillor McKeon. We'll come back just at the end just to check Councillor McKeon. Councillor Mistry.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
Against.
Councillor Sherrington.
Against.
Councillor Sylvester.
Against.
Councillor Zaman.
Against.
Councillor Bagnall.
Against.
Councillor Eckersley Fallon.
Against.
Councillor Hayes,
For.
Councillor McGeehan,
Against.
Councillor Newell,
Against.
Councillor Vivers,
Against.
Councillor Wilkinson,
Against.
Councillor Flitcroft,
Against.
Councillor Patterson, Councillor Patterson,
Against.
Councillor Sanders,
Against the amendment.
Councillor Weatherby,
Against.
Councillor Darvish,
Against.
Councillor Ishmael,
Against.
Councillor McMulkin,
Against.
Councillor Brady,
Against.
Councillor Wright,
Against.
Councillor Gibbon,
For.
Councillor Hornby,
For.
Councillor Allen,
For.
Councillor Fletcher,
Against.
Councillor Bullock,
For.
Councillor Heslop,
Against.
Councillor Cunliffe,
Against.
Councillor Parkinson.
Against.
And I'll go back just to see if Councillor McKeon's on the call. Councillor McKeon. We don't think he's on the line, so I will now ask the officers just to check the votes, please. We'll be back in a second.
We've won it, Mr.
Okay, councillors, I declare the amendment is lost. As Councillor Walsh's amendment was lost, I will now proceed with the named votes for the original motion in Councillor Donaghy's names. So it's Councillor Donaghy's original motion. So here we go again. Councillor Baines.
Against.
Councillor Connor.
Against.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Cunningham.
Against.
Councillor Dean.
Against.
Councillor Fairclough.
Against.
Councillor Galloway.
Against.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Against.
Councillor Haslam.
Against.
Councillor Hewitt.
Against.
Councillor Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Muslim.
Against.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Warren.
Against.
Councillor Waters.
Against.
Councillor Abdullah.
For.
Sorry, Councillor Abdullah, could you just
For.
repeat? Thank you. Councillor Adia.
For.
Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Donaghy.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Ibrahim.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Karam.
For.
Councillor McKeon. Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Sylvester.
For.
Councillor Zaman.
For.
Councillor Bagnall.
For.
Councillor Ecclesey Fallon.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor McGeehan.
For.
Councillor Newell.
For.
Councillor Beavers.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Flitcroft.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Weatherby.
For.
Councillor Darvish.
For.
Councillor Ishmael.
For.
Councillor McMulkin.
For.
Councillor Brady.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Councillor Gibbon.
Against.
Councillor Hornby.
Against.
Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Bullock.
Against.
Councillor Heslop.
For.
Councillor Cunliffe.
For.
Councillor Parkinson.
For.
1 second, councillors. Yeah, the motion is carried. Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider motions under Standing Order 4. Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider a motion in the name of Councillor Newell relating to the production of a community book.
Councillor Newell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. This motion was originally put forward in response to the issue of free school meals at autumn half term of last year and this government's response to the problem. But it soon became clear to me that the new problems facing our residents need to be seen in the whole and not just one aspect of need, i.e. free school meals. And so the motion evolved accordingly. I could, of course, use my time tonight to talk about the government and its woeful performance, but our vulnerable citizens deserve better than political bickering. They need help and they need it now. Political posturing and claiming the moral high ground will not help, nor will it feed hungry children or help their families. It seemed to me that the response to the free school meal issue was reactive rather than proactive, but what a magnificent reaction it was. As usual, all our services and our partners stepped up and quietly and efficiently plugged the gap faced by our free school meal children. It occurred to me then that rather than reacting to instances like this, our residents should be able to access all these services at their point of need, with autonomy, dignity and privacy. Which brings me to the community book. What is the community book? Well, in 2012, Wigan Council commissioned a Lee-based firm to create a community book. This is a free online directory which allows residents to connect with local services, activities and events in their community. It is available 24/7. Individuals can search for services and help by matching themselves to local groups and also volunteer and share skills if they want to. It is a dynamic service which is updated and evolves all the time. Community groups and organisations can create their own listings, find new members and recruits, advertise and share equipment, and all listings can be managed from one central point. Wigan's Community Investment Fund is very much like our Bolton Fund and has helped over 500 community projects via the community book. As well as viewing online, there is an app that can be downloaded by any resident. This app can access every service and voluntary body available in the Borough of Wigan. Every doctor's surgery, school or social worker can find this information by simply entering their postcode, and then every group and activity within walking distance of that postcode will be shown. Groups and services can regularly update their offer and the service costs very little to run. We would obviously need to advertise the service so that people know of its existence, but the marriage of service and need can be formed for the benefit of all, from those that are in a permanent state of need to those who find themselves in a new and frightening position of dependency on others. By developing our own book, we can always be prepared for any eventuality, and our partners and CBS groups will have their offer showcased throughout the borough. For those who do not have access to an app, we can reach out in other ways. Right now, we have families trying to navigate a new and frightening territory, facing problems that they perhaps thought they would never come their way. We do not know how long the situation will last or when we will resume life as it was before the pandemic. But we do know that our services and those offered by our partners will always be required. Please let us look at this fresh approach to the provision of service. Finally, Poverty kills communities, and much has been said about the chaotic lifestyles led by parents that impacts their children with regards to poverty. But the experience of many is that when you have nothing, when you live hand to mouth, when holding down multiple jobs still isn't enough, chaos will follow. And with that, the constant anxiety and worry about food and provision. We should be able to guide our residents out of this morass, and a community book will go a long way to help. Charles Dickens said, "The poor have no childhood, it must be bought and paid for." And it is a fact that in every class of 30 children, 9 will live in poverty. I have little faith in this government, but I do believe in the commitment and endeavour of our Bolton family to offer the very best of service to our residents. The community book would be a great asset in doing this. Please support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. Councillor McGeehan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. I formally second the motion of Councillor Newell. It's been a difficult year for everyone. For those of us lucky enough to have kept our jobs and our full salaries, I'm sure, like me, you are counting your blessings, and your heart goes out to those who have not been so fortunate. Perhaps the hardest of all to imagine is children who have no control over their lives and what situation they find themselves in. Some children rely on free meals at school as their main meal of the day. And whilst the matter of free school meals during the half-term holiday was dealt with, there is still an urgent need for assistance for families and children in our area living in dire circumstances, either before COVID or as a result of COVID. These vulnerable children have done nothing to deserve the situation they are in, and they deserve and need our help. In this modern age, in a first world country, innocent children should not be going hungry, full stop. I think we learned a long time ago that we cannot just say that children are the responsibility of their parents and wash our hands of them. We have a responsibility to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And we have a responsibility to help vulnerable children and their families. That's why I'm supporting the motion of my colleague, Councillor Newell, and I urge you to do the same. I formally second the motion of Councillor Newell. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGeehan. The next speaker that's indicated is Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members. It's quite something in 2021 that an online register of all relevant services available is not available council-wise, but with the austerity cuts, it will have been hard over the years to fund all of the ideas. There has been an excellent council families information service, and we have social media from children's services. That is outstanding. Bolton Council for Voluntary Services have a directory, but I think they would admit that it's not as comprehensive as they would wish. I pay tribute to Bolton CVS, who regularly ask its membership and residents who connect with them to enter any group or service details into the CVS directory. The council and this Bolton CVS directory could be more interconnected. Local government would be a good host for an online book, but if the council feels there is a more skilled host, the council could commission an online book or go into partnership on this. It does feel like the motion is selling this as a spend to save activity, in that people in hardship would become somewhat more empowered and poverty in its widest sense may be reduced. Two aspects to dignity. One, a number of organisations in Bolton do already work with a dignity approach. The pay into food banks provided by Urban Outreach and Bolton at Home for a few years now, they came from a view that formed at Urban Outreach when just the handout to food banks were running in Bolton, that there was surely a way of doing food banks in a way that engendered taking control and having a stake, dignity basically. Poverty workers here have been working on the philosophy of hand up rather than hand out, reduce dependency, create more empowerment, but it's been hard as Conservative government policy has been moving in the opposite direction in the round. Examples are the 2-child welfare limit, so the money is very thin in some homes, benefit sanctions against people who are ill and disorganised, reduced incomes for disabled people like legacy benefits. People have felt stigmatised by a government system that engendered view about feckless people with plasma TVs. Recently, a Tory MP tweeted that money for children's half-term lunches would be spent by feckless parents on crack cocaine rocks. It's hard to keep the politics out of it all the time when we know that we've got to get structural changes in the country to have less children in poverty. The second point on dignity too is that the injustice of a perpetual unfair economy, where the gap in Bolton between the top bosses in companies and the lowest paid workers is seriously wrong. Both the High Pay Commission and Low Pay Commission say it's wrong. Real dignity will be achieved when the unfair low pay rates that have marinated too much in England and in Bolton here since the 90s finally get addressed. A good place to start is a Labour motion that's coming up on care workers' pay. This motion of an online book of assistance is one tool in the box. Those with the determination to do all that we can to assist as many people as possible to have good lives in Bolton know that we need some structural changes too. Lives need to be less saddled with the lifelong problems that poverty brings, whether that poverty is brought about by or worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Galloway.
Am I on? Am I on? Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Newell, for your motion. Before I come to your proposal for a community handbook, I do have to take issue with you over how proactive the council has been in responding to the enormous challenges arising from the pandemic in relation to the most vulnerable in our community. As you have noted, there is the contribution of the Local Welfare Provision Scheme and our humanitarian offer, where anyone financially struggling, meeting the criteria, is automatically given food parcels for a month. During this winter, we are using the COVID support grant of £1.1 million from the government to support and target vulnerable families. This will include £20 a week vouchers for each child in receipt of free school meals to cover all the meals at half term and the school holidays. But also these vouchers will be provided to those families, as Councillor Newell says, who are just above the free school meal criteria but are vulnerable. Anyone who is on council tax support and have free school age children or children over 16 will also get this help. There is also ring-fenced monies to support care leavers, troubled families and homeless with practical help. We have given a grant of £250,000 from DEFRA to the Bolton Fund at the end of last year, which is for community groups and organisations who prioritise giving help to struggling families and who are able to access those who are most in need at the ground. Therefore, we as the council are using a variety of ways to get help to the most vulnerable. With regard to Councillor Newell's proposal for an online community book to help disadvantaged families access all the help that is on offer, along the lines of the Wigan Community Book, we do already have an online register, My Life in Bolton, which fulfills the same function as Wigan's book. It is actually a statutory requirement to have one for children and adult services. The Care Act requires the council to signpost adult care information, and the Children's Act requires us to do the same for childcare and the SEND offer. It has been running for around 5 years, and is basically an online directory of all the services across Bolton, including private and voluntary providers. The council web team coordinates it, but individual organisations can add and update it directly. The site and operation does need an overhaul, and I know that the executive member for digital services, Councillor Muslin, will be looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. Councillor Muslin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, as Councillor Galloway just rightly pointed out, we do have a community sort of handbook online already through My Life in Bolton. So I just wanted to take a moment just to sort of speak to members about that. And for those who are curious, you can obviously just Google or go to mylifeinbolton.org.uk, which I imagine many of you may have done already, to go and take a look at this. And as Councillor Galloway points out, it has been in existence for over 5 years. And the My Life in Bolton website really is designed for members of the public, but also has a lot of use for council officers and staff and partners to use for signposting many offers to residents of Bolton. And the website has the aim of providing awareness with a focus on timeliness and ease of use, as well as to maintain quality with a strong reputation and act as a trusted source. And if one does take a look at the website, they will see topics including families, care and support, local offers, advice and what's on. And there is also dedicated support for Send Children too. And these areas do then go on to expand to cover things like jobs and careers, travel and transport, as well as health and well-being. And My Life in Bolton does also enable the council to achieve good outcomes, support longer term planning and focus on specialist roles. And these in turn help to deliver business efficiency and sustainability for the council. And obviously it's done as part of our commitment, as Councillor Galloway rightly stated, as one of our statutory duties. However, I would add that while this form of community book does already exist, I am conscious that not many residents will be aware of it unless they are told about it from staff. And so I'm therefore keen to see ways we can actually promote My Life in Bolton in conjunction with the work that the Executive Cabinet members for Children and Adult Services are currently doing. Additionally, I've also indicated to officers that we should seek to review My Life in Bolton and understand the success it has had over the past few years, and also identify areas for development, because I'm sure we can always seek to improve on what we do as a council. And I want to, my vision really is to see it as a hub for support that meets the requirements of 2020, post-COVID, and also over the coming decade. And this work will take time, but I hope it will be meaningful and have a lasting positive impact for the residents of Bolton. And finally, as well, I just want to say that, I do want us to use the benefits of our excellent partners in the voluntary sector, such as Bolton CVS, to help develop My Life in Bolton and ensure that we have true partnership working embedded into the website, providing support for all residents of Bolton. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Muslin. Councillor Greenosh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do just briefly want to cover two of the areas covered in the motion by Councillor Newall, that of the provision of the school meals and the No Child Should Go Hungry mantra, and also this online book, as it were, creation of this new online book. So first of all, it would appear that tonight very few people are willing to give any credit to the administration for any particular reason. However, I do think it's within, definitely, I'm very proud that as an administration we reacted, and it is true we were reacting, as Councillor Newall pointed out, but we got in place that provision, and I was one of the first leaders within GM to make that announcement publicly of our provision during the half term. It worked on a Friday and Saturday night. I want to give credit to the officers, to the chief executive, who basically dropped everything in order to make sure that provision was in place. And I also want to say that our system worked directly from the first day of half term, worked tirelessly to achieve that. Many other authorities actually only got their systems online by the Wednesday and the Thursday of the half term week. And coupled with that, we immediately, through the DEFRA grant and through subsequent grants that we've received from government, we have guaranteed that capability right up until March, including all the holidays and the half terms. So I'm very proud of that we did that. We had to react to that, but I'm very proud that we did do that. And it showed our direction and our commitment to it. On the online book, as Councillor Muslim has pointed out, we do appear to already have one, but there is a question that we all have to ask, because who knew? And of course, it was created 5 years ago under the last administration. And clearly, not many of them knew. Clearly, Councillor Newall putting it forward as Liberal didn't know. And I have to be honest, clearly, many of us did not know either. So, and actually, when you look at it, it's actually quite a substantial piece of work that's online and provides a very, very good basis. And Councillor Muslim has given a commitment tonight to build on that. And it will be great building blocks to actually have a strong base for, I think, exactly what Councillor Newall speaks of. It is a substantial piece of information with many listing and many charities, organisations, contacts. It is a very good starting point for exactly what we want to achieve. Clearly, we have a big comms piece on how we sell that and how we promote that to residents for them to take full advantage of, and indeed across the wider partners. But it's there, and we should applaud that it is there. Unfortunately, we have to admit not many of us knew it was. So so yes, we'll be happy to support this motion tonight. Everything in it we will support. And that's me finished. Thank you very much. Yeah, happy to support.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Newall, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to make a couple of points. Firstly, in response to the Leader and Councillor Galloway, my comment, I wasn't criticising this administration's response to what happened at half term or the pandemic. I haven't, and I never would. You know, there for the grace of God and all that. It's absolutely unknown territory what this administration has had to go to. So when I was talking about reactive, I was talking about how our residents were sort of powerless and were having to just react to what we did, and we were reacting to what happened, what the government were doing. So I am talking about putting something in place so that we can offer a proactive system for future events. And the whole idea of improving on my life in Bolton and having a Bolton book is that what we offer, as well as information, it's not just about information, it's about the empowerment that our residents don't have to go cap in hand to somebody, don't have to approach anybody, actually. They would have it in the power of an app or online, that they can access what they need when they need it. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make, really. What I'm proposing, and I'm sure they're going to go away now and consider this and come up, you know, and build on that idea, and that's great. That's all I wanted. But it's the empowerment aspect of this for our residents that really drove me with this motion. And I just wanted to reiterate, I am not critical of this administration in any way to their response to the pandemic. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. Councillor Newell's motion is before the council. Sorry, wrong page. Chief Exec, will you now take the name vote? I can't hear me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Right, here we go. Councillor Baines.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Cunningham.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Galloway.
For.
Councillor Greenhouse.
For.
Councillor Haslam.
For.
Councillor Hewitt.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Muslim.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Waters.
For.
Councillor Abdullah.
For.
Councillor Adia. Councillor Adia. Okay, I'll come back. Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Donaghy.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Ibrahim.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Karam.
For.
Councillor McKeon.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Sylvester.
For.
Councillor Zaman.
For.
Councillor Adia.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Adia. Councillor Bagnall.
For.
Councillor Exley-Fallam.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor McGeehan.
For.
Councillor Newell.
For.
Councillor Beavers.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Flitcroft.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Weatherby.
For.
Councillor Darvish.
For.
Councillor Ishmael.
For.
Councillor McMulkin.
For.
Councillor Brady.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Councillor Gibbon.
For.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Bullock.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Heslop.
For.
Councillor Cunliffe.
For.
Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Parkinson.
For.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider a motion in the name of Councillor Howarth relating to Marmont principles.
Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members. The health equity report from Michael Marmont was published at the outset of the pandemic. It revealed that the health gap has widened between poor and wealthy areas, and that improvements to life expectancy have stalled and declined for the poorest in our borough. A report for government called the Disparities Report makes it abundantly clear that the victims of coronavirus are disproportionately working class, poor, some are from ethnic minorities. Many who have passed away were key workers. The coronavirus mortality rate is more than twice as high in the most deprived areas of England compared to the wealthiest parts. Black and Asian minority ethnicities inequalities are hugely highlighted by COVID, and there is data we already know. Whilst much broad BAME data is reflected in employment data and income data, there is data where determinants remain less clear. So in the UK, black mothers are 5 times more likely to die in pregnancy and postnatally than white mothers. Marmot tells us to reduce the stress for people that visible inequality brings, and that providing skills training and good jobs after childhood's free of harm, these are the key things to do to get rid of health inequalities. COVID had an immediate effect on people's jobs and incomes in Bolton, in the borough. Poverty statistics for the borough show us that it was hard before COVID, especially for low-earning working families. Low-income families are more likely to be in poor health, have a family member who is disabled, or be caring for others in the family. The Health Foundation reports that for 10 years, government has significantly shifted expenditure away from the services and infrastructure that help people on the social determinants of health. Boris Johnson was going to cut the funding to the children's school meal vouchers over the summertime and the autumn time to a lot of deprived children until a footballer stepped in and pleaded. So on the timeline, that's not long away when you consider the approach. Parts of our borough remain in the 10% most deprived areas nationally. People have shortened lives due to inequalities. The difference we're used to hearing about is how you get around 12 more years of life if you live in the Lostock area than if you live in Great Lever. This is a pattern you can find repeated in other towns, wealthy areas versus deprived communities. In the Bolton borough, the inequalities are
Councillor Howarth, we've lost your sound. Have you muted yourself?
Sorry, but no, I didn't.
We've got you back now anyway. Okay.
This is a pattern you can find repeated in other towns, the well-known gap of the 12 years of life difference. For example, if you live in Lostock rather than if you live in Great Lever. Many people have poorer health from their years of 50s and 60 years of age for 15 years or so. Not just shorter life, but 10 or 15 years of poorer health too. These are not just facts that challenge us, they are injustices. It requires the political will to act on evidence and divert resources to improve housing and improve young children's lives as examples. It is within our communities where we witness the harsh reality of the health inequalities that so desperately need to be addressed. Social inequalities and adverse childhood experience are drivers of mental ill health, and they cannot be ignored. Children from the poorest 20% of households are 4 times more likely to have mental health difficulties by the age of 11 these days. It is getting urgent to address the vast chasm of health inequalities we find in this borough. There must be culturally appropriate services and bespoke services for our borough that we here believe are right. The council and partners should work on income maximisation for residents in the borough. Pounds spent on this is an investment. Bolton at Home did some work engaging older tenant residents. They found a notable number were not in receipt of welfare payments that they were entitled to. Coventry is one of the Marmot cities. Coventry's been achieving by reducing young people in NEET, more children achieving good development scores at age 5 and so on. Working on the wider determinants of health in Coventry shows that the life expectancy gap there between the most affluent and the most deprived in these recent years has narrowed. COVID-19 will worsen existing inequalities if the government does not fund and support councils to drive down health inequalities. Marmot tells us austerity policies have caused these dreadful health outcomes. We look to the new Active Connective Prosperous Board in Bolton to achieve on health inequalities, and we wish it well. Councillor McEwen particularly wanted to second my motion this evening. If he's not able to be with us, I would be most grateful for a seconder. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Howarth. Councillor McKeon.
Thanks, Madam. I am here just about, and I very much want to second the motion that Councillor Howard has put forward. And I want to begin with a question: is health inequality inevitable? Some historical evidence would suggest it is. In the Middle Ages, a lord's sons and daughters could expect to live into their 30s, and the peasantry 5 years less. So the
Councillor McKeon, your microphone has gone on mute.
Thank you. Did you hear any of that?
No, I think you might have to start
Nothing.
again.
Start again. I'm sorry. Apologies. Oh dear. God. Right, well, starting again. Can you hear me now? Madam Mayor, can you hear me? No.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Carry on.
Sorry. Right. Well, I began by saying, is health inequality inevitable? Some historical evidence would suggest it is. In the Middle Ages, a lord's sons and daughters could expect to live into their 30s, and the peasantry 5 years less. So the poor lived 85% as long as the rich. The modern world is only a little more equal. Children growing up today in the most deprived areas can expect to live between 85 and 90% as long as those in the least deprived areas. It looks as if the proportion is more or less constant. However, other historical comparisons lead to a different conclusion. In the early 19th century, inequality was dramatic. Working class people could expect to live on an average perhaps 19, whereas the median age was 40. So why were conditions in the 19th century so appalling? Well, I would argue it was because local and national government was not active in regulating social and economic life for the benefit of the majority. Nor did authorities take action in providing decent housing or basic services, even sewers that were so dependent on. Once government, and local government in particular, did begin to take an interest in civic improvement, the lives of the working class and their life expectancy improved. Local government activism was transformative. Pavements, sewers, public parks were just three of the benefits brought by councils of the time. National government played its part, not least by introducing health and safety legislation for factories and mines. Government intervention works. It certainly worked in the 20th century. What we know as the welfare state developed incrementally from the early years of the century, making an evolutionary leap with the Labour government's measures in 1945. Health inequality declined, life expectancy rose, and the share of income going to the top 10% fell over 40 years from 34% in 1938 to 21% in 1979. 1979, of course, is the crucial date. The arrival of Margaret Thatcher, who agreed with her soulmate Ronald Reagan that the state isn't the answer but the problem. Since 1979, the process of narrowing inequality has gone into reverse. Inequality rose in the 1980s and reached its peak in the 1990s. The Labour administration from 1997 to 2010 developed a health inequality strategy which led to some improvement, but as the original Marmot review demonstrated, there was still much to be achieved. The years from 2010 to the present have been disastrous. Once again, we've had a government committed to a small state, to little intervention. The latest Marmot review shows the extent of health inequality and the stagnation of life expectancy. This is not an accident. Austerity truly costs lives. Income, housing, education, environment are all determinants of health. Each has been neglected, first by the Tory Liberal coalition and then by the Tory government. The decision to cut benefits, to cut spending on early years education, to cut public health spending, all these were politically motivated and not an inevitable consequence of the financial crash. Overcrowded housing, and dependence on sometimes poorly maintained private rented housing is a consequence of a decision to neglect the provision of good quality secure social housing. Marmot described 2010 to 20 as a lost decade. The Resolution Foundation points out that there have been 34 billion of benefit cuts since 2010, and that child poverty will rise by a further 6 percentage points by 2023-24, the highest ever. From 2010, local authorities have been cutting non-statutory prevention services ranging from family intervention to smoking cessation. Not the least of the damaging decisions that have had to be made by councils as a result of government cuts is the closure of so many Sure Start centres that have the potential to transform the lives of so many children. Marmot's review paints a grim picture of the last 10 years, but he points a positive way forward. However, if progress is to be made, it must be on the basis of a belief that government intervention works. This government claims to want to see a levelling up. This won't be achieved simply by building roads and hospitals. It will be achieved by investments in the determinants of health. I second the motion. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor McKeon. We now open the debate. Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Howarth, I've had to really reflect and consider what exactly you're really asking for here, as your verbal syntax was something at times confusing. Your 4 statements that you list are already, to be quite honest, being worked up across GM. So yeah, you know, I am quite perplexed by this. We're absolutely concerned about health equity generally and across our borough particularly, especially when after 40 years of a Labour administration in Bolton, our rates of ill health and deprivation have deteriorated further and further, unlike some other neighbouring authorities across GM which have seen marked improvements. You refer to health equity in England, the Marmot Review 10 Years On report, which was published in February 2020 last year. But since then, there's also been a subsequent report due to the COVID pandemic, the Health Foundation Building Back Fairer report, which was published in October, which also, like its predecessor, reported on the social determinants of health, the conditions which influence good health, such as the type of birth you have had and your parenting, your living environment, your education or the lack of it, and your employment, all of which can create ill health and poor well-being. But in addition, as a result of COVID, this report highlights the need to ensure the public health offer is better funded going forward. According to Marmot, the key to addressing deprivation is to be healthy in both the physical and psychological sense, and that in order to do this, people have to be recognised as autonomous individuals with an ability to take control of their lives. This empowering approach is both moral and effective. It was something previously referred to in the previous motion about being empowered and self-motivated. Marmot offers that this is beyond the reach of the NHS alone and requires action across all the social determinants, including renewed emphasis on the role of local government and the voluntary and private sectors. Professor Marmot talks of local authorities having short, medium and long-term goals with measurable outcomes. Additionally, he refers to 6 policy objectives, and we have considered these over the last 18 months to reflect the Bolton vision. Through the Integrated Care Partnership, the IPC, the Neighbourhood PCN model, the JSNA and the ACP board to which you refer. We now have a strategic and well-led plan across the borough and led by the council, Bolton FT and the CCG to work collaboratively and differently than in the past to promote and maintain good health as opposed to only focusing on repairing poor health, often and sadly when it's too late. We are now bringing the right people together, armed with the most robust and contemporary professional evidence to support our residents to take control over their health and so their lives to become more active, connected and prosperous. We as a council are working with the GM Marmot team. Manchester is a Marmot city, to help ensure that reducing health and therefore social inequality is embedded into all we do. And as Public Health England has reported this as a whole systems approach, or systems-led approach, I should say, to a place-centred public health. I will of course support this motion, as we are actually doing this already across GM. That's even why I'm even more perplexed with this. And really, you know, if we could redirect some local funding from some of the things we've been discussing tonight, we might have a little bit more money to do some of these things to support your motion. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Heslop.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to go back to something that Carl was talking about, and it's about income maximisation and getting people out of poverty. This council or the administration agreed to have appropriate officers in place to seek as much funding as possible from central government in grants, and it's commendable. We're now seeing the benefits of that. We've got the farm with 13.3 million, and I'm no doubt that in a short period of time we'll have further announcements. We have to remember this is money that's coming from central government. Now, in respect to the individual, I'm often intrigued why we don't encourage and go out there to encourage individuals to claim their entitlements from central government and help them where they have got problems with dealing with debt. I'm sure this would be an investment, and I think as we have officers in place to deal with the grants available from central government, we should be looking at a local level to encourage, to get people in place. It's an investment in the people of this borough and getting them out of poverty. I do have a slight issue with Council Bay, so it's something that we need to consider. We need to get people, and if we're not able to get the funding for the officers in place, then perhaps we as councillors should be going out there into our wards, our towns, to say to people, there are people that can help you to get what you're entitled to, from national government, from the DWP, locally as well. And if you're going putting a leaflet out there, I would urge councillors to include it in the absence of us being able to get funding for these officers that are going to help people out of poverty. As I say, we can do it for the other initiatives. I hope we can move along to people. I do take issue with Councillor Baines though, with regards to getting people out of the chair, saying into fresh air. Well, I have had some people from Kersley saying that will definitely not be happening if they don't self-fund their own bowling green. Some of them will be going back in and staring at four walls. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Heslop. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too will be supporting this motion.
Councillor Dean, do you want to put your camera on?
Sorry, it's on my camera.
Or is it? It's not on my screen. Okay, carry on.
All right, okay, sorry about that. Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I will be supporting this motion, as Councillor Baines has pointed out, that we're implementing Marmot both at a regional and local level to the best of our abilities. There are many inequalities society faces, and this is the case through many decades and many centuries. out of these inequalities, health inequality must be the worst form, or one of the worst forms of inequality. Now, Professor Sir Michael Marmot, who is well respected across all parties and also in the medical profession, has highlighted significant issues that we as administrators, lawmakers, decision makers need to implement as politicians. Why should people living in deprived areas live shorter lives? That's a question that needs answering. Why should people living in different regions have different life expectancies? Why an increase in deaths by despair, suicide, drugs, alcohol abuse? All these questions, amongst others, need answering, and it is up to local partnerships, as they are doing, working towards answering those questions to reduce health inequalities like other inequalities. Would be living in the perfect world, and that's what we should be aiming for as decision makers, as politicians. COVID-19 more recently has highlighted further discrepancies, but we must note that NHS spending over every government in many years has gone up, and but on the other hand, administration costs have as well. It's very interesting to listen to Councillor McKeon's lectures, because every time I do listen to his lecture quite keenly, he sort of sleepwalked from 1997 to 2010 through a Labour government, and predominantly the last 40 years of a Labour administration locally, where we have spent a lot of money in certain areas through funds like City Challenge and the 3Ds and other regeneration projects, whether they're through national or European funding. And at times money has been spent in deprived areas, but we've still not achieved what we should have achieved. So it's early days for this administration locally, but as I said, it's very important to work with partners and both locally and on a Greater Manchester level. So I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Howarth, do you want to exercise your right of reply?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. First to say that I think this motion's been with the council probably a year, actually, if you assess it, and I'm not really one to moan about a backlog. You know, I just crack on with things, and it's possibly why there was that slippage on whether additional reports weren't mentioned. I did actually wish the Active, Connective, Prosperous Board well, actually, in its journey on health inequalities, the focus there on the social determinants, because it's the main committee that covers all the broad economic matters and social matters for the borough, and I'm going to stick to that wish, those good wishes for that board. I think members will have got an instinct from the comments I made that I'm across all the reports on all the Marmot cities, and actually I did choose Coventry because of the excellent outcomes that they've been achieving, and I have a particular interest in outcomes and the whole economic evaluation of outcomes. Just a couple of other comments I would say, which is that yes, those that have spoken have highlighted that when we don't pay enough attention to economic matters such as the 1980s, and when we've had to live through austerity, the science, the information from Michael Marmot makes it clear that that's when the real problem, health inequalities, kick in. The other thing that we can pay attention to at the council now is that every decision that gets made at the council in local government have a good look at equality impact assessment there and consider health inequalities on decision making as much as possible. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. It's now time to do the name vote. Just to say, I think this will be the last motion tonight, because I don't think there's sufficient time after the name vote to do justice to the next motion. So I hope that's acceptable to everybody. Chief Exec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the named vote. So, Councillor Baines.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Cunningham.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Galloway.
For.
Councillor Greenhouse.
For.
Councillor Haslam.
For.
Councillor Hewitt.
For.
Councillor Morgan. Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Muslim.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Waters.
For.
Councillor Abdullah.
For.
Councillor Adia.
For.
Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Donaghy.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Karam.
For.
Councillor McKeon.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Sylvester.
For.
Councillor Zaman.
For.
Councillor Ibrahim. Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Bagnall.
For.
Councillor Eckersley Fallon.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor McGeehan.
For.
Councillor Newell.
For.
Councillor Vivers.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Wilkinson. Okay, I'm going to move on. Councillor Flitcroft.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Weatherby.
For.
Councillor Darvish.
For.
Councillor Ishmael.
For.
Councillor McMulkin.
For.
Councillor Brady.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Councillor Gibbon.
For.
Councillor Hornby. Councillor Hornby.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Bullock.
For.
Councillor Heslop.
For.
Councillor Cunliffe.
For.
Councillor Parkinson.
For.
And one last try, Councillor Wilkinson. He's there, but we can't. He's on mute. You're on mute, Councillor Wilkinson. One last try. Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, that motion is carried. Madam Mayor, that concludes the business of the Council. Any motions not debated this evening will be carried forward to the next Council meeting.
Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Good night.
Good night, Madam Mayor.
Good night, Madam Mayor.
Good night, Madam Mayor.
Good night, Madam Mayor.
Good night.
Good night.